sort of two real problematic positions in the shoulder in CrossFit, or kind of working athletes. One is this overhead position, and we've seen in the 2-minute drill, four exercises is a good place to start. The second easy position that we see a lot of problematic motions and restrictions is this internal rotation. And basically, what we'll see is that there are a lot of our movements require that we have a great high level of internal rotation. If we think about pulling into that scarecrow position or snatching, it requires that I'm able to bring the hands down and not let my shoulders come forward. So when the shoulder comes forward as a compensation for lack of internal rotation, I've suddenly ended up in this delicate position again, and now anything I do is going to load that shoulder in that bad position. One of the biggies for ring dip, which is basically internal rotation and extension, same kind of combined movement, requires. And so if we see people on the rings or doing, muscle ups and ending up in these terribly loaded positions, which are very tissue challenging, what we're basically saying is, hey, you're missing a lot of internal rotation, so when I go to pull, I've really got to do this transition or dip, I'm missing internal rotation extension, and the joint starts to having to come forward. Does that make sense? You guys see? So let me show you what it looks like, and let's see what we can do about it. Because this is a biggie. Come on back up again. So if we bring the arm out to the side here, the athlete should easily be able to internally rotate to just about the ground, right? So go ahead and just bring your arms down to the ground. Okay, so he does that, right? Great, he's got full range of motion. Can anyone spot any problem here? He's making the face there, right? What do you see, right? His shoulder has had to come pretty far forward in the socket. You okay there one more second? Yeah. It's like an arm bar, isn't it? Right? If I just locked here, I'm like, dude, tap out, bro. And as soon as he's here, these tissues are maximally challenged. I'm compressing his long head of the biceps underneath the acromion. I'm impinging the crap out of him. What's my mechanism of injury for torn labrum or torn a slap tear? And it's this shoulder translating forward. In past episodes, we've talked about how we really want to minimize the amount of what we call translational loading in the joint. So if I have a loaded system and then my joint suddenly translates through that tendon, wham, I exert forces on the tendon and the local tissues of high speed, high velocity, big force. In fact, the forces are almost quadrupled at either side at the insertions. And so imagine that I am doing a muscle up, I weigh 100 kilos, and suddenly I don't have any internal rotation, so my shoulder has to crank forward to be able to get into that position. So not only has my shoulder been in a bad position, and am I weak in this position, but I've potentially translationally loaded all that stuff, and I'm going to be, no wonder my shoulders get a little achy and hot. Does that make sense? And you're going to see that same pattern time and time again. We see people end up in this position, internal rotate, missing the internal rotation. And that internal rotation means then that the shoulder is going to be forward in the socket, and it's going to steal a bunch of slack for other things that I need later on. Rarely are we doing a single movement where I'm able to keep something back. This is a combined movement where I have to go from a good position into maybe a different position to another position, right? And so the same thing with the snatch or clean and jerk. And so if I have one bad tissue set up, it's difficult to reclaim that good position downstream. So if I pin his shoulder down or in the back of the socket where it belongs, that's the floor, that's the back of the socket, and then internally rotate, it's like hitting a wall. Can you see that? So look, he's like, I can press. You can't press. That's the end. And so he's only missing, let's just be honest, almost all of his internal rotation. Right? That's not a problem, is it? Did you know you had this problem? No. And that's what we see. So let's take a look at the other side. This is your less affected side, right? Is there any difference? So is this still a little bit ugly? Yes. But because your body desires to be in such a pain-free state, and it's so good at buffering your bad positions and putting up with your crap, that even this amount of internal rotation is enough to sufficiently unload the shoulder in the movements that we do. Does that make sense? I need a little bit of breathing room, and I can get a long ways. So let's do this. Let's have you guys test your internal rotation for me, okay? So on your back, bend your knees up, elbows out to the side, and keeping your shoulders pinned on the back of the ground. Let's see if we can find your internal rotation. Out to the side, shoulders on the ground, boom. Looking so silly with your shoulders on the ground. That shoulder belongs there, and then you internally rotate to there. Can you feel the end? Yeah. Yep. So if the arms come out, right? So shoulder goes back, and that's the amount. You feel that? And if you do that yourself, it's about there, right? And if you'll notice that athletes where the arm tends to open up, that's one way that we're trying to compensate for that lack of internal rotation. So put the shoulder in that neutral position. Oh, do you feel the difference? Right? So see if you can get into that good position yourself. There you go. One of the reasons we like to do a lot of floor pressing in our gym is it helps athletes to understand where the back of the socket is. Can you press that shoulder back and keep it on the back of the socket where it belongs? Which shoulder is the more problematic shoulder? So when we bring you up actually to 90 degrees, pin your shoulder back. Oh, hey, look, there's a restriction that is happening before we even get to neutral. So we have negative range here, right? And if I actually put your shoulder into the position where it belongs, you can see that he has a little bit of external rotation, but it feels like a hard wall here, right? So when your arm comes in, go ahead and bring your arm down to the floor like you're going to snatch. Oh, he doesn't even want to do that. Can you bring your shoulder forward in the socket? Yeah, let's do that. Do your cheat for me. Go ahead and get your palm on the floor. Can you do it? So limited, but now what is the hero in this situation? Right? This thing, because it's buffering this lack of position. So now we start to think differently about my achy tissues. Instead of being like, dang, this shoulder, you should be like, this shoulder was a war veteran hero. It put up through 59 Frans. I remember I did Fran in 07, and it was there for me, pulled me out. So what we start thinking differently is like, hey, that tissue's talking to me because it's been buffering my bad mechanics. It hasn't failed me. Does that make sense? So what do we do about lack of internal rotation? What's something we can do? First thing, let's think about our systems. If this is a simple muscular problem, it's just like quadriceps and hamstrings or antagonist muscles on the opposite side of a joint. If my external rotators are tight, they will limit my internal rotation. Can you see that? The same way that if the back of my leg was tight, when I went to extend my knee, I would have this problem. Well, the same thing happens this way. So if his external rotator's tight, come sit up for me. And in this situation, go ahead and let's turn and face the group a little bit. Two muscles that we're going to kind of focus on specifically are right here in this path, and these are the external rotators, right? The infraspinatus and teres minor are the two little guys that do a lot of the hero's work to keep the shoulder positioned and externally rotate us. Looking at how they're mismatched against all of the internal rotators, the lats, the pecs, the bis, the anterior delt, all the rest of the rotator cuff muscles, these guys alone are just holding it down. So, what happens if I put a ball here and then try to move through that, right? Can someone hand me a ball, a lacrosse ball? If this is a muscular change, whoa, I didn't think I was going to make that catch. Come on back. On camera, it's like the Super Bowl, right, of lacrosse balls. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up what's my position of emphasis. Right here, this is the position I'm trying to talk to. I'm going to put that thing somewhere in those external rotators. That's somewhere in the back of my shoulder blade, back here. Get an anatomy book, see where it is. But in the meantime, do some informed freestyling. And then I just want you to pull into internal rotation. Do you feel anything tight there?
Not really tight, it's just pain in the joint.
Just pain, okay? So just go back and forth a little bit for me. And let's see if we can move this around onto one of those external rotators. And let's go back and forth for me. Let's get you guys some balls too and let's try, okay? So remember, test, retest. Get a picture of what you look like in your brain. How much internal rotation do you have? Get on one of those external rotators. Right, it's kind of the outside part of your spine, of your scapula. Rotate back and forth a little bit. Excellent. And then we'll just rotate through. Whoa, right? We're just grinding through some of that business. Can you feel that?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. In this situation, what are we doing? We're restoring sliding surfaces, right? Where kind of all these things get matted down, may get a little bit ropey. Like pencils, a bunch of pencils together, we want layers of silk sliding past one another. So go into that internal rotation position, roll around until you find something that makes you feel vomitous. How do I know I'm in the right spot? You might soil your britches. You might need brown pants. Internal rotation. So look at this interesting posture that you're, what's going on with your shoulder? Relax that, there you go. Tension position. Roll around, try to internally rotate. Do some informed freestyling, you get 30 more seconds. Someone just tapped out. Did that hurt your shoulder? Where do those external rotators insert? Right here. If they're tight and ropey, they're going to come around. A lot of the pain that we associate with external rotators being maxed out at end range is the insertional pull of those things onto the shoulder. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. 2-minute drill. Okay, kick that ball out. That was long enough. We should have seen some change. Test, retest. Is there a difference? That looks better. Is it better? Is it better? Is that feeling different?
Yeah, feels a lot looser.
Feels a lot looser. The 2-minute drill.